Hello, Mr. Liu and my fellow classmates. I'm Emily, here together with my fellow groupmates.
Magesh
Rihanna
and Chongan.
Today, we are going to present to you our task, which is estimate the overall household income that a typical Singaporean family with one kid should have. This is our table of content. Firstly, understand the problem. Second, deriving a plan. Thirdly, carrying out the plan. Fourth, looking backwards. And lastly, extended tasks. Before we start solving, we have to look at the questions, and there are certain keywords that are important and given to us. They are one kid, two parents, and dual income. Some information required to accomplish the task are the food prices for children and parents per meal. According to a survey conducted, the snacks chosen by our classmates for the child's snack break is the Mummy Snack, BBQ flavored, which costs about $2.68. Next, the secondary school that the child is attending is Yuan Ching Secondary School. The mode of transportation for the children is mainly walking because the school is located near his house. As for the parents, they will be taking the public transports to and fro from their workplace. They will be living in a 3-room flat, and the cost of their water bill is about $31. There is no other relative or extended family to provide for, and they do not have a flat. We have made multiple assumptions when we do this question, like for transports. Parents will take public transports around 20 km per trip, and they must take Singapore public transports, which costs about $1.96 for both bus and train. In the end, the total transport fee per person is $968.24. And as for the child, he will be walking to school. As for the food, they will not be cooking and only eat outside. So, for cost per person for breakfast is around $3, lunch $5, and dinner is about $6. Hence, the annual income is about $15,330. For the bills, they will be living in a 3-room flat. The water bills is $31. The average unity price for a household with gas is $110.82. The phone bills is $25.23 per month for 100 gigabytes. As for the TV, one broadband is $50.37 per month. The child is a Singaporean and is 15 years old. He is studying at the government school. He is in perfect health and not suffering from any diseases. So, for the school fees, it's about $25 monthly. Annually, it will be $300. For the school uniform, it's about $58. And the books will be $261.86. And the average school shoes is about $35.
Okay, so let's devise a plan. To represent the selected task mathematically, we are letting x be the number of people in the household. So we are going to give equations for that. Firstly, formula for transportation fee for one person annually, which includes the trip per working day times the number of working days times the cost of one ride, either by bus or train. Second, formula for food, which includes the number of people times the day times days in year times food prices on average, which includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Thirdly, formula for school fees, which include monthly cost times number of months plus school books plus number of sets, which includes the cost of shirt plus cost of pants plus cost of snacks times the number of school days. Fourthly, formula for bills, number of months, which includes water bills, electricity and gas bills, plus data plan, plus TV broadband. To conclude, the total amount required is 3x times 2f plus 3f plus s plus b. Okay, assumption in this strategy. First, we are assuming that they are only spending a set amount of money for food. Second, we are assuming that they go to Yuan Ching Secondary School. Third, we are assuming that the child walks to school, so no transportation cost for the child. Fourth, we are assuming that the child is a boy. Fourth, we are assuming that there is dual income only. Okay. Now, limitations to this strategy. First, it is not possible that each person in the family spends only $14 on 3 meals every day. Secondly, it is not possible to not have a day off work, example, sick or
This is
holiday.
how we carry out the plan. For one person annually, we calculated the transportation fees by firstly multiplying the number of working days by the cost of one bus or train ride, and then multiplying it by the trips per working day, which is 2. So 365 minus 11 minus 104 times 2 times 1.96. This brings us to a total of $980 per person used on transport. To calculate the money spent on food for the 3 people in the family, firstly multiply the days in a year by the food prices on average of the 3 meals and multiplying it by the number of people in the family, which is 3. When X is the number of people in the family, 3 times 365 times 14, which totals the money spent on food in a year to be $15,330. As we assume the child is 15 years old, they will need new school supplies for the year. So, to calculate the school supplies and fees, we need to multiply monthly costs by the number of months plus school books plus the number of sets multiplied by the cost of shirt and pants plus the cost of snacks multiplied by number of school days. The total amounts to $914.86. Furthermore, we need to calculate bills at home. To calculate the bills, multiply the number of months with water bills, electricity, gas bills, data plan, and TV broadband, which totals to $2,609.04. When the money spent on transportation, food, school, and bills are added together, the overall household income that a typical Singaporean family with one kid should have is $20,813.90. This is the table which shows the different amount of money spent in each category. From the graph above, it can be seen that most of the money are spent on food and least on school expenses. A pandemic or inflation are one of the biggest constraints. Some other constraints include taxes and other forms of taxation, such as food, where GST and personal income tax are charged.
Okay, now let's talk about real world solution. Firstly, inflation. The GST prices have gone up to 8% this year, which is 1% higher than last year. So the price of goods have increased by 1%. This is expected to increase even further in the future, so a higher annual income is needed to overcome the inflated prices. Secondly, pandemic. People have lost their jobs in the recent pandemic and has caused them to rely on other forms of income to support their family. Coupled with the increased price of necessities, a pandemic can cause the minimum annual income to increase.
From the graph above, we believe our calculations to be an adequate analysis of the annual income a family must have in order to support a family of 3. Including tax, the total gross annual income of a family comes out to around $26,200. For an annual gross income of $26,200, there is a 20.5% tax rate charged, causing the net pay to be $20,842, which is the minimum annual income needed for the family of 3 to live in Singapore. To have a better representation of the real world, we could have accounted for sick days and injuries along with any viruses that the family could have contacted that called for days of work to be taken off. This will make a more accurate representation of the real world, as on those days that parents or children are not leaving the house, the fares for transport will not be counted.
For the extended task, our group is focused on the state of Johor Bahru, Malaysia. To find the respective prices for the different aspects of life in Malaysia, we used the same steps we had used previously when finding the different prices in Singapore. In the end, we have found out that the transportation fees and school fees of Johor Bahru are much higher than the ones in Singapore. In the end, we have found out that the transportation fees and school fees of Johor Bahru are much higher than the ones in Singapore. For Johor Bahru, the transportation fee comes out to 16,837 SGD, while the school fees come out to 1,110 SGD. While the transportation fees in Singapore come out to 980 SGD, and the school fees come out to 914 SGD. Our group attributes these disparities in the cost of living to Malaysia's larger landmass compared to Singapore and their lack of public transport, causing the need for more private transport in Malaysia compared to Singapore, where we can cycle or take public transport to our desired destination. For the disparity in school fees, we have attributed it to the subsidies that a Singaporean citizen gets when they attend a public school. This, coupled with the tax money Singaporeans pay to reduce the school fees, makes the cost of going to school in Malaysia much higher than in Singapore. On the other hand, the food prices and bills in Singapore are much higher than in Malaysia. The food prices and bills in Singapore come up to 15,330 and 2,609 SGD respectively, while the food prices and bills in Malaysia comes up to 7,114 SGD and 2,080 SGD respectively. This tells us that there is a 8,215 SGD difference for food and a 528 SGD difference for bills. Our group attributes these large disparities to the lack of landmass in Singapore, causing Singapore to need to rely on imported produce to supply its citizens with food. However, Malaysia has a large excess of landmass, allowing them to be largely self-sufficient, causing their food prices to drop. Malaysia also has an abundance of natural resources, allowing their bills to be lower. Thank you for your time and patience for listening to our presentation.